Thank you guys so much for coming to our webinar here on mobile video recording. We're going to go through several different points on recording with a mobile device, whether it's like a cell phone or a tablet or pretty much, whatever you have, you should be able to record some video with, which, we hope will be helpful for, especially for those of you who are members of BCAT and Southwest TV who, haven't been able to do as much over this past year with the pandemic and everything. Hopefully this will help you maybe do some new projects from home with what you've already got. So jump right into it. There it is. The first thing I just wanted to point out real quick is the format that you are recording in. So depending on the device that you have, some older devices might not be able to record in HD, but most of them from the past like 10 years on should have an option to record in HD. So you just want to make sure that you're recording in 1920 by 1080, which is also, your camera might say 1080p or HD or full HD. Or you can record in full 4K if your device is able to do that. But for our purposes, for programs that get submitted to BCAT, we only broadcast in, technically we don't even broadcast in HD, we broadcast in standard definition still, but our system can output an HD file. We can't output 4K. So some people like to record in 4K because there's different things that you can do with that type of resolution when you're editing. You can do like digital zooms and things like that. But make sure you're at least recording in 1920 by 1080. And the way that you would do that, you just open your camera and go, move it to the video, slide it over to the video, and then open your settings from there, and you should see an option to change the resolution, or just to check it should already be set to 1080 most likely, but just check to make sure you're recording in HD. So framing, this applies to, a lot of you are familiar with these concepts already. Those of you who've been doing this a long time, it applies to any kind of video production. But I just wanted to repeat it again, just in case you aren't familiar with it, and just to, it applies when you're shooting video or photos and stuff as well. So kind of the standard framing that you want to look for especially when you're doing like an interview kind of setup, is what you see here on your screen. You want to make sure you have the proper amount of headroom and the proper amount of look room. And what those refer to, headroom means the space between the top of the subject's head and the screen frame at the top. And I'll go over an example of how you don't want to frame it up in a minute. But look room is the amount of space between the subject and the edge of the screen that they are facing. And the rule of thirds, this kind of applies, it helps with framing as well. And some cameras have these, you can see these lines through the image there. Some cameras have that built into them, especially when you're doing photos. You usually can turn that on. But otherwise, you can just kind of keep that in mind, try to visualize that on your screen as you're recording. But the rule of thirds it breaks your image up into 9 parts, essentially. So you have 3 parts horizontally and 3 parts vertically. And you can see there that 2 of those points, the kind of, it's the upper left point. Can you see my mouse? Can everyone see my mouse? You see that, Dan?
I do see it, yes.
Okay, cool. I can use it as a pointer. That's good. So this point, like right here, it meets right about where my head is roughly. So I got my head in that top left corner there. And then this is a setup for if I was talking to somebody, interviewing somebody, and this was my camera that was pointing just at me. That's kind of how I would want to frame that up.
And Ben, before you move on, I have a question from Amanda, who asks, how do you know if your camera has the lines?
That's a good question. So it should be in your camera's settings. I'm going to see if mine does. Of course, that's the thing, is every device is different in what they have, and and some of them you're able to, download other types of cameras too that might have those things. There are tons of camera apps, so if the one that's built into your device doesn't have that, you can look for other ones. So mine, when I go to camera on mine, it has it in there. I can see those lines. I'm trying to see if there's a way to turn it off, and I'm not seeing it on mine. When I go to video on mine, I don't have those lines, and I don't see a way to turn it on. But again, you just got to go into your camera and look through your settings in your camera. My settings for my phone, when I open my camera app, it's a little drop-down menu at the top. It's just like a little arrow at the top of the screen. It might be different for you. You might have like a little gear symbol, in one of the corners or something like that. So every device is different, of course, but you just got to kind of look through it. And like I said, you can always play around with other apps too if the one that your camera or your phone came with, isn't to your liking. So that's a good question. So going back to framing, if you have too much headroom, it makes your subject look small, and it's just kind of awkward. And if you have too little headroom, which is the picture on the right, then it's going to cut the top of your subject's head off, which you don't want either. And with look room, if you have too much look room, so that's the space again between where my face is and the edge of the screen there. If you have too much look room, it's just an awkward amount of space in there, and then also you may end up cutting your subject off on the side. But too little look room, just don't do it because it's just weird. You have all this empty space behind your subject, and then they're just staring into the edge of the screen, and it looks a little weird. But as you'll see in the next screen, there are exceptions to the rule sometimes, and it really it depends on what you're shooting, and what you think is appealing to the eye and what you think the audience might be appealing. So, for example, here in this photo, I wanted to show that whole little art piece that was behind me there. So I kind of changed the framing up a little bit so that you could see that. I did this pretty quickly, so it's not the best example. Personally, if this was me, I probably would frame it a little bit shorter, not have quite as much headroom, and I'd be fine with kind of cutting off the top of that piece a little bit. But this is just kind of an extreme example there. Some other examples are like with news and documentaries and narrative films and stuff like that. They purposely will crop the frame a certain way or frame the person, kind of on the other edge of the screen, like you see here. If anyone has seen the show The Handmaid's Tale, the cinematography in that show is fantastic. It's not really an appropriate show for kids, but the cinematography is really, really good in it. And they do these types of shots a lot, where the main subject is purposely framed on the other side of the frame, and they're staring off into that edge of the frame. And they also do a lot of these low angle shots like this a lot. And they do that because they're trying to make the viewer uncomfortable. And personally, for me, just looking at this still frame, I'm uncomfortable looking at that. But that's the whole point. That whole scene is uncomfortable, so it's supposed to make the viewer uncomfortable as well. And then the other screen here, this one I just pulled from Google because I was trying to find an example of kind of an extreme crop. But I've seen this a lot in like news and stuff, and like PBS style like documentaries and things. They do this really tight crop during an interview, and they might cut back to more of like a medium shot, and then they'll like cut to a little bit tighter shot, and then sometimes to a super tight shot like this, a tight crop. I guess it can work, I guess, depending on what the person is saying. Personally, I don't think this tight of a crop is that great, but it depends again on your creative look on it and what you're trying to portray. And I saw a question. Let's see. I guess I can see the chat and stuff. Okay, so Amanda asked, does the rule of third apply to vertical shots or horizontal only? So it's both, and that brings up a good point. I mean, the rule of thirds really, well, so I'll go back a little bit. So vertical with video, you want to try to avoid most of the time. Obviously with these different types of apps like Instagram now has IGTV where you're viewing the video in a vertical aspect ratio. So instead of like 16 by 9, which is horizontal, you're viewing it in 9 by 16. And so in that case, there are a lot more people, especially like these YouTube creators, these content creators and things like that, that are creating vertical videos only. Like that's pretty much all they do. They just like shoot these videos for Instagram and stuff like that because it looks better on a phone. It views better on a phone. But for like our purposes here for TV and like YouTube and things like that, you want to shoot in a horizontal aspect ratio. And so generally speaking, going back to the rule of thirds, when you're doing it vertically, it does still apply, but most of the time people are just they're usually just centered in the shot. But that being said, you still want the person's head to be, there's still going to be two horizontal lines going through that vertical shot, and you want their head, you know, that top line to kind of be going like right through their head. Otherwise, that's going to give you, you know, pretty good framing with not, you know, too much headroom and things like that. So I hope that answers your question, Amanda.
Ben, I was just going to say you could move around as far as where you are with the camera right now to kind of illustrate.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if people could still see me. I can barely see myself. I'm like in a tiny box in the corner. I mostly just see my presentation, but yeah, if everyone could see me, like, so this is kind of a general framing that I would frame up for, you know, like interview things, or even if I'm just interviewing a single person, I still would frame them this way. Even sometimes you might ask the person to look directly into the camera if they're trying to tell something to the audience, and I would still frame them up this way personally. In that case, you could frame them up in the center like this and have them look right into the camera. But especially if you're doing an interview where you want the person to talk to you and you're standing off to the side of the camera, that's kind of more of the traditional way to set up an interview shot like that. It just looks more appealing. And so I would be like this and I would be talking off that way if everyone can see that. I don't know.
Yeah, I can tell. I can tell, Ben.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Any other questions about that before we move on?
And I just wanted to hit on improving your video, you know, when you are just out running errands or something, or you actually plan on a hike or, you know, some activity and you know you'll be recording video, but maybe you don't want to go with, you know, all the tripods or, you know, the big fancy cameras. And so these are just a few pointers that will help you get better video. And you can see here that I'm holding the camera horizontally because I'm thinking in my mind, okay, I'm going to present this, you know, on SWTV, which is a traditional broadcast, and the picture needs to be horizontal. So that's the way I'm going to hold my camera. I'm thinking about that ahead of time. And here are just a few quick pointers. You know, keep the camera closer to your body rather than way far away from you. It's just going to be more stable that way. There'll be a lot less shake. Cameras on your phones have some stability control now, but it still helps if you bring those arms in, you know, close enough where, you know, your elbows are touching your body, but not so close that you can't see the screen very well. And then the other thing is, you know, how often have you done a pan of something and then realized, oh, wait, you know, I can't turn my body anymore, you know, to keep following the subject, or you know, there's this ugly billboard right in the background and I can't use that shot. And so if you actually think ahead and plan where that action will enter the frame, where you'll pan and where it will leave the frame, you'll end up with a much better piece of video. And you can see I've skipped over a bullet point there, but my toes are pointed in the direction of where I want my pan to stop. And that's for stability too. If you're turning your body uncomfortably too far in one way or the other, you're going to get some of that shake. You'll probably have a crooked shot at the end, something like that. So keep that in mind as well. And I've already hit on the background, but the position of the sun is also a good thing to keep an eye on. You don't want to start a pan and then the sun is right, in your lens. That kind of ruins the video too. So a few simple things to think about the next time you take that camera out and do a pan. All right, Ben, the next slide. And if anyone has any questions throughout these, go ahead and raise your hand or ask a question. This one, we sometimes fail to look around us for things we can stabilize ourselves against. I don't know how many times, I've been in a room where, I need to get a picture of a conference or something, and I'm standing in the back of the room, and there's a lot of people, and, the tendency is to just snap the picture of where I'm at. But if I take 2 steps to the left and lean against a wall, I've turned myself into a tripod. And again, you can see here I've used a tree, and I'm bringing my arms in close to the body, and at that point I'm hitting record. This works great for still photographs too. And in news, I did a lot of video work off the shoulder, as they say, where the camera is sitting on your shoulder, and you have 2 hands on that camera as well. So there's a lot of movement that can happen with your body as you breathe. Your chest is moving up and down. Well, with a camera, a small cell phone, you don't realize it, but the act of breathing also has some motion with that as well. So if you're really looking for a super stable shot, maybe you're looking to string together like 10 beauty shots from a park, and you don't want that shake in there, just hold your breath for a few seconds, or just exhale very slowly. So those are just some tips. Any questions so far? All right, moving on to the next one. Lighting, of course, is very important for professional quality video. And if you actually look at your surroundings before hitting record, you can improve interviews really without doing a whole lot. So this is my living room, and I found a corner that had a lot of light to begin with. So it was daytime. I didn't have to do a lot of work to improve the look of this shot. If I had done this in the hallway, I would have had to find a bunch of lights and taken a lot of time to improve the look of this shot. Here, I did want to get rid of some of the shadow where her hair falls across her face. So I brought in a lamp, a floor lamp, and just used that to kind of fill that shadow. There are a few things to keep in mind here. One is you don't want to overexpose part of a person's face by bringing that light in too close, right? That doesn't look very good. You get that with the sun sometimes. So by backing away that light, you'll be able to find a good balance. And they say in portrait photography, you have your main light, and then you have your fill light, which is slightly dimmer than your main light. And so it provides depth to the image as well. One quick thing, you'll notice that the light outside the window is kind of a warmer tone. So if you can find a light in your house that's also a warmer tone, that will be helpful as well. On to the next one. So reflectors. It's, a reflector is basically a shiny surface or a bright surface that reflects that light, that natural light, again, working with what you have to improve the shot. So here you see a before and after. This is a typical Minnesota, wintertime sun that's hanging low in the sky. Well, you can take advantage of that and really improve your shot by simply using a reflector. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. If you want to go to the next slide there. So you can pick up a professional one that folds up into a little tiny pouch for about 10 bucks. They're not large, the cheap ones, but they're super portable and very, very easy to use. It helps if you have another person with you to hold that. In that picture before, I was actually holding that myself with my hand that's out of frame. So I was actually being my own reflector holder. But if you're doing an actual interview where you're asking someone questions, you wouldn't want to do that. You could anchor that down somehow, or recruit someone to hold that for you. Okay, and there's a DIY version of this. I've basically just taken a vinyl record. I've got a lot sitting around the house, and I just put some tinfoil over that because it was kind of a last minute thing, and that's what I had available. And sometimes that's just what you've got. You might have a bright piece of white fabric that would also provide a little bit of reflection. I was thinking, in Minnesota, we have those reflectors in the window of our cars sometimes to keep the car cool. Well, that would work as well, as long as it doesn't, put a lot of hot, bright spots on someone. It's got to be a kind of an even light. So keep that in mind as well when you're looking for reflective materials. Is this going to provide an even reflection? Any questions so far? All right, we can keep going, but of course, raise your hand anytime.
You can buy white cards or poster board at the dollar store
There you
for
go.
like half price, and it's good and quick, and gives you a more even light instead of a metallic thing.
Yeah, and even light, a white material does provide kind of a, what do you call it, like a soft box effect where it evens out, wrinkles, and it provides a much more flattering light than that metallic reflector. That metallic material provides more of almost like a magnifying glass effect. It's really strong, but sometimes that can be a little harsh.
Yeah, it tends to the silver kind of stuff tends to catch the like direct rays of the sun and kind of bounce it back as like a spotlight, whereas a big white sheet or a white card kind of collects all of that light and reflects it back evenly, so you get a much more even lighting, soft lighting.
And here's another example of where I had a very strong sun behind me, and typically you don't want to shoot into the sun, but you can also use it as a backlight if it's high enough in the sky. And in this case, that's what I've done, keeping in mind you don't want that sun to be shining into your lens. And again, the reflector just shining back on my face to provide that light. The background here doesn't really provide anything. This was just in my backyard. But do keep in mind, even if your background is out of focus, still keep in mind where branches are and cars. You don't necessarily want a branch sticking out of someone's head like this picture here. It was just kind of a spontaneous thing. But keep that in mind when you're doing these shots. Okay, next slide.
All right, I can
Both
talk
of us
about this.
kind of chat about the audio piece. Did you want to start with this one, Ben?
Sure, yeah, I can start with it. So, there's a huge variety of ways that you can record audio with a mobile device. Um, and I tried to kind of put them somewhat in order of like worst to best. So obviously the first option is just the built-in cell phone microphone or tablet microphone or whatever you've got, or a computer microphone like we're on now. Those don't tend to sound very good. They're usually very small microphones, and they're really made for just doing stuff like this, like a video chat or something like that. They're not going to be great quality, but they work fine as a last option, especially in a controlled environment. If you're outside with a lot of like traffic noise and things like that, you're going to get a whole bunch of that noise or wind noise or whatever. You're going to get a whole bunch of that into that kind of microphone. Um, a lot of cell phones, well, I think pretty much every cell phone nowadays comes with a pair of headphones that usually now have a built-in microphone. I can't think of the last time I got a phone that didn't come with headphones with a built-in mic. And they're usually pretty decent, especially the iPhone ones seem to be pretty good. And that's kind of what Dan in the picture there is showing. He's using the headphones with the built-in mic as like a lavalier, and then recording. I'll let you kind of talk about how you set that up there.
I had a few old phones sitting in a drawer, and they just weren't really doing anything. And I realized that I could, clear some space on that old phone and use it as a dedicated microphone, simply using, the cord, the headphone cord, trying to hide that, of course, but using the voice recorder app on that phone and syncing the audio and video later on in an editing program. And it worked very well. I've done it actually 2 times for videos that I've used, and presented. So the quality, of course, like Ben was saying, is not amazing. It's a small microphone. You don't get the depth of a larger, more expensive microphone. But hey, it works, and it's better than getting the sound of the entire room when you're 6 feet away from someone. If you've got a mic right next to them, it's going to sound better. So a quick, just something that might be an option for you, because microphones can get expensive, and if you just have a drawer of old phones, or maybe someone who's willing to donate one, it's an option.
Yep. So next on the list is a couple of options for, or maybe you've already got some, but a couple of options for microphones that you could purchase. Lavalier microphones, everyone's familiar with that. It's the kind of clip-on microphone that are used for interviews, or little like miniature shotgun mics are made for a variety of mobile devices. And they come in a variety of shapes and sizes and prices and quality and everything else. So you kind of have to do your research on it a little bit. But I mean, you can even just go on like Amazon.com and search for cell phone microphone, and you're going to see hundreds of options. And again, you kind of get what you pay for a lot of the time. So there's a lot of these sort of off-brand ones that are maybe like $10 or something, but they're probably not going to be great. But depending on what your budget is or how much you're wanting to spend and how important your project is and stuff, you can kind of shop around for one that you think will work for you. I think that a lot of these are pretty much compatible with any kind of device nowadays. They're usually just like a plug in and go type of thing, and it should record off of that mic. You may have to go into your camera and mess with the settings to make sure that it's recording from the plugged in microphone. But I think most of them are just kind of plug and play kind of things. I know that wasn't the case even just a few years ago. We used to have or we still do have a member here that he used to try to go on Facebook Live off of his phone while he was in the studio, and he had bought a little shotgun microphone that he plugged in, and it would not work. It didn't work with his device, and so it was one that was probably built for like an iPhone or something, and he had an Android. So just keep that in mind when you're shopping around, that you might want to just double check and make sure that it's going to work for your device. One that I came across when I was kind of looking these up is Rode is a very popular microphone company. They make all kinds of professional microphones, but then they make some that are made for mobile devices, like their Video Mic Me. which is it's a little shotgun mic, so it's probably about 2 inches long, I'd say, 2, 3, maybe 3 inches long, and it just plugs right into the end of your phone where the microphone jack would be, and then you're ready to go. And that's another thing to keep in mind is most devices these days, the newer ones anyway, don't have a microphone jack. They have different, depending on what it is. Like I have a Google phone, and I don't know if you can see that, but all I have is a USB 3 plug, and that's kind of that's the charging port, that's the audio port. It's kind of everything built into there. So, you do got to make sure that you're getting the right microphone for your device. Um, but I haven't tested that Rode Video Mic Me. I've never used one, but I've used other Rode mics before, and I've always been happy with the quality of those. So, and I can send this whole presentation out afterwards because this is a link here, so you can either look for it yourself or click on the link. Um, uh, the last option, which is the more expensive option, but it's going to be the best quality, is to use an external recorder. And these again come in a range of quality and price and different features that they have. But one of them is the Tascam DR05X, which is $100. Usually they have little microphones that come on them, and they're okay. And you could set one, depending on how you frame up your subject, you could set one on a table, kind of like right in front of them. And it's going to be better than like your cell phone mic. But that's something, like Dan said, you would have to sync that audio up later when you go to edit the video. But they usually, all of those devices, as far as I know, they have at least one input, and this Tascam has one input. It's like the same as the microphone jack, called a 3.5 millimeter input jack on there. So you could get another little lavalier, and plug it into that Tascam and record the audio that way.
I was just going to mention that this is an old Tascam, but I use it every week to record audio, and it works really great. I don't know what the price is of these. This is the H4N, but this has been around a few years, so you might be able to pick up one of these professional devices for a really good price if it's a few years old.
Yep, I had that same one, and I'm pretty happy with it. Here at BCAT, we have an H4N also, but it's like like they re-released the H4N. It was weird because they went on to like the H5 and 6 and stuff, and then they like re-released the H4N, and it's a little different, but very similar. So we do have one here at BCAT that's available to check out as well. And those work really well, especially for like gathering natural sound. So, if you're doing a piece on some type of like nature piece or something like that, and you want some sound of birds chirping or something, those work really well to just go out and hit record and point them up into the sky and collect some nice natural sound. Any other questions about audio? I know audio is always a tricky thing, and it's definitely important. It's more important than video if you want to get, especially if you're going for quality. If you're doing like a very important story, documentary piece or something like that, and you're interviewing people, you want to make sure you have good quality microphones that you're recording with. Because people are gonna, if they're watching it and they can hardly understand what the person's saying, or it's very tinny or something like that, they're much more likely, even if it looks good, they're much more likely to shut it off if it doesn't sound good. Click. Come on. There we go. All right. Do you want to talk about this a little bit, Dan? Just briefly.
Sure, yes. So one of the challenges with creating a project using your phone as a video camera is that part where you're trying to get the video onto your computer and you're trying to transfer files, and sometimes it can be a headache, and why not just, create the project on your phone? You know, a few years ago, that would have been really challenging, but the processing power of phones today makes it possible to edit these videos very well. They look like they were done, professionally. And I had to give it a try. I'm someone who edits on a desktop computer a lot, so it was kind of a challenge for me to tell myself, no, don't touch the computer at all. You're just going to use your phone. And so this was the first project I did this year with Adobe Rush. It's a free download. If you pay a little more, you get some more options with the program. But for basic edits, it works extremely well. I have a Samsung phone, which allows you to drop in a 400 gigabyte memory card. So space wasn't an issue for me, and I know that phones have more and more memory these days. So, when you can, check out the video. There is a link in the presentation here. But if you've done any kind of nonlinear editing, it's exactly the same, but you're using your finger or a stylus instead of a mouse. And of course, precision is a little trickier, but with the phone, you can really zoom in and get those precise edits. It took me a little longer than it would have taken on a desktop computer to do the actual editing. But the bonus was I didn't have to go through the process of transferring all those files to a computer and then, uploading those to the one program that I have to edit and exporting it out and then uploading it to YouTube. From this one program, I could take the videos that were in my gallery on my phone, put together a video, drop in some music, and then export it straight to YouTube. And I'll tell you what, I mean, just the ease of doing that versus trying to get it onto the computer, it made it worth the effort. So, if you haven't done this yet, even if you don't plan to produce something professionally, just give it a try and see what you think. Ben?
Yeah. Yeah, and if you are recording on a tablet, something that has a bigger screen, obviously that is going to be a bit easier. I haven't tried this yet myself, but like Dan was saying, if you have a stylus for your device, it's probably a little bit easier to use that too, I would imagine. But I can speak to that. Particularly with this Adobe Premiere Rush, we use Adobe Premiere here at BCAT for editing. And so this was the program that we wanted to share, just because it has kind of a familiar look. But there are other video editing apps out there, and I mean, again, you can just go to like your store, the Apple Store, the Google Store, or whatever. And I see Patty raised a hand. I'll unmute you in a sec, Patty. You can find other ones out there, but they might not be, as professional. They might not have as many features, and some of them even put a little, what's it called? Like a little stamp in the corner, showing what you edited it on, which obviously isn't ideal. As far as the free version of Rush versus the paid version, I tried to figure out exactly what the difference is, and the main thing that I saw was that with the free version, you can shoot and edit and share as many videos as you want on your device, on your mobile device, but you can only export 3 videos, because you can get this for a desktop computer as well. You can get Premiere Rush on your desktop. But you can only export 3 videos before it makes you do the paid version. So that was the only thing that I could really find that was different with the paid version, is it allowed you to export more videos on your desktop. I'm guessing it probably also has a few extra, filters and features and
There's
like that.
transitions
Yeah.
and graphic animations, I believe.
Sure.
If you're doing text over video, there were some more options there. It's more of the kind of the fancy effects that I wouldn't really use on a normal basis, like filters and that kind of thing.
Sure.
But if you're just looking for normal editing of video without much processing, like altering the image, then the free version works really well.
Sure. And I was just gonna say too that, like Dan was saying, it was really easy for him to edit this on his device and just send it to YouTube. And that's ultimately what editing on a mobile device, these different mobile apps are designed for. They're really geared towards those YouTube creators, those content creators, to be able to quickly edit and upload a video. But you can export it and have that final video too, and submit it to BCAT or SWTV as well.
One thing I'll quickly add is this editing program does allow you to change the image to be compatible with Instagram or some other platform. So that's already built into it. So I was recording a horizontal image, but if I wanted to, I could export this for Instagram pretty easily. That feature is built into the free version.
Nice, cool. Patty, I'm sorry, I forgot this happened the last time too, but oh wait, I did unmute you. You did it. Okay, cool.
I did it on the thing.
Okay.
So I'm wondering about this free version. Back in the day, at least when I started on the desktop, you'd have like 30-day free trial to decide if you wanted to buy something. Is that this, or is this you can just go on and use the free version for however long? They don't ever prompt you to pay for. Does that make sense? Question?
Yeah, I've had this on my phone for at least 6 months, and it hasn't given me any notifications or anything annoying like that. So
Okay.
it still works the same as when I downloaded it,
Okay.
back in June, I
That was
think.
it.
Yeah, I've had it on my phone, but I just haven't used it yet. And same thing, I've opened it a couple times thinking I'm gonna try to edit something, and I haven't. But I haven't gotten any kind of notification asking for me to pay for it. It's just like I said, I think it just has that limit of 3 video exports, and then that's on a desktop computer. And then after your third one, then it'll probably, I'm guessing, would pop up and say you have to buy it if you want to export more. But if you're exporting from a mobile device, you should have unlimited options there.
Limited
Okay.
exports.
Yeah. All right.
That was it.
Cool. Mute you again, Patty. Good question. All right. How long is your video? Should we watch it real quick or?
Go ahead, give it a shot. See if the audio will play. I'll go ahead and mute myself here.
Come on. I'm just skipping through now. There we go. Hopefully the audio plays. Let's see. Everybody see that still? Dan, let me know if you don't hear it.
So obviously the refresh rate on WebEx isn't great, so it looked a little like a stuttered video, but I think you kind of get a sense of the transitions that you could use. I had some dissolves in there, and at the end I did a fade to white because the sun was coming through the leaves. So That for a free program, I was pretty impressed with that. And this is a good transition to the whole accessory part of this because I did use that tripod that you see on the left side of your screen there for most of those recordings, those little clips pieced together. Ben, did you want to continue with this one?
Yeah, so good transition into affordable accessories. Um, so that tripod that Dan was talking about on the left side there is called a Gorilla Pod. That's actually the brand name of it. They make a bunch of different size Gorilla Pods, but the one that you see there, I'm guessing, is the one that's made for mobile devices. It looks like a little bit smaller of one. Um, but they make them for like DSLRs and stuff too. And they're for what they can do, they're relatively affordable. So they have these little kind of rubber grips on the legs that are all you can bend them whatever way you need to bend them to grab onto like posts and tree branches or whatever. But then you can also just use it as like a little mini tabletop tripod kind of thing as well. So a lot of different things that you can use a Gorilla Pod for. There are tabletop tripods available as well for a variety of prices and quality and things like that. But they're not bendy and stuff. They just sit on a table, but they work well for vlogging or whatever things like that. There's also a lot of different lenses out there now for made specifically for mobile devices, and again they range in price from what I researched, starting around $5 to about $120, and there may even be more expensive than that. But they're all a little different in how they operate. Some of them are just like a clip, and you just simply clip it on over your camera, and then you can get like the fisheye look or wide angle look or these different types of looks. The one that I put here is the brand is actually called Moment, and their website is shopmoment.com. But they have, they sell like all different kinds of camera backpacks and camera gear and things like that, but they got started designing their own lenses for mobile devices. And the way that theirs works is you also have to buy a case for your particular device, and they keep pretty up to date with the newer devices. So like I have a Google Pixel 2, which now they're up to the Pixel 5, I think. And so Moment no longer carries a case for my phone. But what you do is you buy a case, and then the lens just clicks right into the case, and so it's very easy to switch out lenses. But this particular lens that you see there, the 58 millimeter, is one of their more expensive ones. It's $120, but they have some that are like $50, 50, 70. I think I saw one. So depending on the type of lens that you want, they're going to range in price. But that's going to be a much higher quality lens. Again, you're getting what you pay for. So some of the cheaper ones that you can find on Amazon or whatever, they might work okay for kind of like a neat effect or whatever, but they're probably not going to be super sharp. Gimbals, if you're not familiar with what a gimbal is, it's basically it's a stabilizer is what it is. It has three axes on it, so there's one right here, and one behind the phone that you can't see there. But those three axes basically keep the phone in its place essentially. So you should be able to like run with this thing, and you're going to see very little shake with it. And like Dan mentioned, most phones have some like digital stabilizing in them. So when you combine that with the gimbal, you're going to get a pretty smooth video. So it's a really nice way to get nice smooth videos for like panning and things like that, or if you're following somebody around or something like that, for a pretty decent price, really. This one here, the DJI Osmo Mobile 3, it's a little bit older of a model, but you can still find them at Best Buy and stuff for about $100. And so the bigger gimbals out there for bigger cameras are much more expensive. They usually range anywhere from like 400 up to several $1,000s for them. So it's a relatively affordable gimbal. I saw Amanda posted a question here. Do we have these accessories and are they available for checkout? That's a good question. For mobile devices, no, I don't have these particular accessories. We do have a small Gorilla Pod that it actually came with a bag of accessories for our GoPro. So it's actually meant to be used with a GoPro, but if you get the right head for it to be able to clamp your cell phone in there, you could use it with that as well. But no, I don't have any lenses for mobile devices or a gimbal for a mobile device. I do have a somewhat bigger gimbal for like DSLR cameras. But it's a good question. I mean, the lenses especially would be a pretty easy thing to get for BCAT, that like especially the ones that just kind of clip on to any mobile device, so that they can be used by multiple people. That's definitely something I could look into. But yeah, as far as them being available for checkout, all the stuff that we have for checkout, you do have to become a member of the station to be able to use them. But essentially, yes, they would be available for checkout. So
I just wanted to mention, I do have the clip-on lenses, and you do have to get them in exactly the right spot. Otherwise, your image will be blurry. So that's one thing I've learned. And then the other is you can get some really cool perspectives with these, but I find that I don't use them a lot. One really cool thing that I did was we had a hailstorm, and I was able to put a lens on here that allows the camera to focus right next to the lens, so you can get these macro shots. And the image was so clear that you could see the little like micro like holes in the individual pellets. So it was a really interesting perspective that I hadn't seen before or even thought of capturing on video. But if that's what you're going for, there's some value in it, especially when these things aren't too expensive.
yeah. Oh, I think I skipped something. Yeah. Okay, there we go. All right, so selfie sticks. I think pretty much everybody's familiar with the selfie stick now. Again, there's a huge variety of selfie sticks out there. Some of them are, depending on where you're looking, some of them are kind of like more name brand ones, if you will, or more kind of professional selfie sticks. And, you probably think of, when I think of a selfie stick, I don't really think of them as professional in general, but they can be a very useful tool. This one I found for just $15 on Amazon, had pretty good reviews, and it doubles as a tripod too. So the bottom of the handle can break out into 3 legs, and then it also came with a little remote too, to remote start recording. So again, there's a whole bunch of them out there. You can look around. One website that I buy things from more than anywhere else is called B&H, and it's bhphotovideo.com, I believe, is their website. But if you go on there and you search for things like a selfie stick, you're going to find more of a professional, higher quality, better built kind of selfie stick. But usually the things that you find on Amazon, they do come with these, kind of fun extra features like this tripod and stuff. But just be aware that, again, you kind of get what you pay for. And this type of selfie stick probably isn't real high quality. Probably won't last super long. So cages, what a cage there's camera cages, and then now they have cell phone cages as well. That's what you see in the darker spot here. The rest of the stuff that's grayed out is just kind of showing you accessories that you could attach to it. But the phone is actually behind the cage, and it kind of locks into the cage back there. And then you've got all of these different things you can attach to it very easily, like a lens. There's a couple of hot shoe mounts up at the top there, so you can mount a light or a microphone on there. This on the side is actually this brand Small Rig. They're a professional brand. They make all different kinds of camera cages and rigs and stuff like that. But they have a couple versions that you can get that have these like handles that stick out on either one side or both sides, so you can grab it, and walk around with it like that. But then you should be able to also put a tripod into it as well, because that's another thing, is if you're going to get a tripod for your phone, you also need to get some type of head for it that screws into the tripod and then clamps onto your phone. And the cage does that. It has a spot to put a tripod into the bottom like that. And this is like an example of one of those smaller like tabletop tripods that I was talking about. But this cage is, when I looked it up, it was $60 on I believe on B&H's website. And again, they had a couple different ones out there. They had one that was like $100 that had a couple of the handles and stuff and was a little bit bigger. And so there's a few different kinds out there. But if you just search for like cell phone cage, you should be able to find a variety out there. Teleprompters, those can be extremely handy, especially if you're interviewing somebody who's supposed to be reading off of a script, and instead of having them looking down and looking up and having to maybe record like one line at a time or something like that, you can get miniature teleprompters now. They make, again, a bunch of different kinds out there. This one I found on B&H's website, and I thought it was kind of cool because it's built specifically for mobile devices. We actually have a miniature teleprompter at BCAT, but it's one that screws into the lens element of a camera, and then you would still use your cell phone as the actual prompter. But the way that this one is set up is you have to have two cell phones or two mobile devices, and you put one in the front to be the prompter, and then the second camera is actually back here. You can't see it because the hood's covering it, but that's the recording camera back there. Is a second cell phone. So this one is specifically designed to use with mobile devices, and it's like a little clamp thing. You can look for this Glide Gear TMP 50 online, and you'll see other photos, but there's like a clamp that holds a mobile device back behind it. And then I made a whole page just for lights because of all the accessories that I was looking up. There are so many kinds of lights out there now. It's unreal. You go on Amazon and you search for LED lights or cell phone lights, and it's just there's so many out there. So it really depends on the application, what you're going to be recording, and how you want to light it and things like that. There are a bunch out there that have these kind of clamps like that you could clamp onto a chair or something like that. And then it's got a little holder for your phone and a separate holder for the light that's on these little bendy arms, so you can move it around as you need to. This one here is powered by USB, so you would need, if you're going to plug it into like a wall or something, you would need to get an adapter for the USB there. This one is also USB as well, but this one's kind of cool because it came with, for $40, it came with this tripod that it has the right head to hold this light, and then your phone actually sits in the middle of the light, which is that would be especially useful for like somebody who's a vlogger who's recording themselves. Again, you get what you pay for. $40 for everything you see here. It's probably not super high quality, but if you're on a budget or whatever, I think it would work just fine. And then I wanted to put in a more professional LED light in there. LumeCube is a company that makes all different kinds of LED lights. I just recently purchased some for BCAT that are just like a little square. Basically, they're kind of like a little square spotlight, and I bought a two light kit, so we have two of them. But they're for how small they are, they're incredibly bright. Um, but this particular kit here is LumeCube's smartphone kit. And so again, it comes with this tripod and the head that you see right here. You can buy this head separately, I think for $15, and it should work with any tripod. But this is like the clamp for your phone. And then it's got the other mount on the top to mount a light onto it like that. So, again, it's going to be higher quality, better build quality, things like that. So. Any questions about any of that? Any questions at all? Because we're at the end. You can unmute yourselves now.
So thanks for the great information, Ben and Dan. So my question, can you talk on like sound or not like music and how that works and like what do you have to pay for? Or is there music where you can use without the copyright issues and that kind of stuff? Like some guidance around that?
Yes, that's a good question that we get a lot. Dan might have other different kinds of resources, but it is a tricky thing with copyright. It's the same with like photos and stuff. A lot of times people think that they can just Google a photo, and since it's on Google, that it's available for them to use. Well, it's available for them to like share with their friends on Facebook and things like that. But if you are using it in any type of production, especially one that you are calling your own, like this is my production, I'm putting it on my YouTube channel, or on BCAT or whatever, then you can't use those types of things. And the same goes for music. So you have to be careful. There are some websites out there that say right on there that you can use this music for any production you want, just give the artist credit. Some of them are made specifically, the whole entire website is made by like one artist. Like there's bensound.com, like my name, bensound.com is one that I've used some of his stuff before. It's just a guy named Ben that makes music for free for people to use. And he says right on there, I mean, you do have to read the fine print, because he says on there, if you're using it for like YouTube, like just, any just random video or whatever that you're making for YouTube, it's fine to use it as long as you give him credit. And he usually just wants credit in like the description of the YouTube video. So you just copy what he's got on his website, paste it into the YouTube description, and you should be good to go. But he does have options to pay as well. And when you pay, then you can use them for like bigger paid productions for like, a documentary that like, you're trying to sell and maybe make some money off of and stuff like that. So there's other websites out there that are similar to that. You really got to read the fine print, because sometimes they'll say like royalty free, and it's kind of like, well, okay, that sounds like it's free and it's okay for me to use, but then that fine print says that like you can only use it for a video that you're gonna keep on your computer to watch for yourself. And so like if you're putting it out there online anywhere, you can't use it. So you really got to read the fine print on the websites. There's obviously a lot of music libraries out there that are online that you can pay for. Like at the city here, we have one that we pay for annually for communications to use, and actually for BCAT members to use as well. And again, we pay for that. So if you become a member of BCAT, you can use that music, and it's an unlimited download type of thing. They're not the most user-friendly websites. Are usually kind of hard to find that exact song you're looking for, but since we pay for it, it would be free for you to download as many songs as you want from that. YouTube also has a music library, and YouTube's kind of like that bensound.com. It says on there that you got to give the artist credit in your video type of thing. So Dan's
I'm posting some links to some of the resources that I've used. Well, I haven't used the Gutenberg one yet, but there is music that's older that is in the public domain, and the Project Gutenberg is a site, gutenberg.org. And if you're just going for a classical piece from, 70 years ago, that's a good place to find that. Otherwise, you are paying $17 a month, $200 a year or so for a subscription to one of those services. So.
I was wondering, do we have any relationships or local networks of musicians and composers who would be willing to create new music for like a new show, something that could be, done regionally or locally?
It's a good question. We don't have any resources here for that, any kind of connections, but it's absolutely a great option. Because if you know any artists and you just ask them, hey, would you make a song for me, or can I use your song or something? I've done that before. I have a few artists, musician friends, and I've said, hey, I really love this song of yours, and I think it'd be great in this video. Would it be all right if I use it? And usually if they're like a local musician, they're not a big like national touring act or something, they're usually fine with that because it's, advertisement for them and stuff. And obviously you'll want to try to give them credit and stuff. But that's probably like one of the best options, because then you've got permission directly from the artist to use that. And then, it's also probably music that hasn't been used in other productions before too. But no, we don't have any kind of hookups for that, unfortunately.
Could we create one?
It's a good idea. I'd have to think about how we could do that, but it's a good idea, like some kind of online thing, obviously. I'll have to think on that.
Reach out to music schools, maybe?
Yeah, music schools. That's a good idea. Might be a good thing, like a good project for, because there's public access all around the country. Might be a good project to make some kind of resource where musicians can go on and, make their music available specifically for public access. It's kind of partnership.
That'd be good practice for an aspiring composer.
Yeah, right. And that's how a lot of those music libraries, get started. Is a lot of times some of them are specifically, they have like in-house musicians or bands or whatever that make music just for their website. But other times they pay just like local musicians to compose some music to put on their music library. So
I haven't really used SoundCloud a lot, but I know that the local artists use that for their recordings.
Sure. Well,
pretty much upload to that if you have an account.
Right. Yeah, I know a lot of people use it for podcasting nowadays too. Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Well, I had a question for anyone remaining, if they have any ideas for a future, production club, or if there's something that they want to know more about. I think we've done a couple now on kind of the mobile theme, but if there's something else out there that you'd like to learn more about, or maybe, something more in depth, let us know, or if you have any ideas right now.
There's still the audio thing, audio terms, like editing, what's pop fizz, all the,
So,
I'm going to speak for myself, but, knowing what aperture is and what light and contrast and, and all that shadow, that kind of stuff, but trying to edit and maybe fix sound or alter some sound, and not even knowing what any of those terms mean when you open up audio effects.
Okay.
So that would be something I've kind of been hoping we'd be able to find somebody that could do some basic audio 101.
sure.
That's a good idea.
That is a good idea.
And especially since audio is, really the important thing, more important than visual, and especially with it highlights how important it is when you listen to some of these broadcasts where some of the audio is just horrible. People are in their basements or they're, just muffled or buzzes.
I do something with that, yeah.
So, and I find it hard because I have sat there on the computer at times and I'll have some sound effect and I'll just start at the top and I'll just drag different effects on and listen, and sometimes it does nothing, but I have no idea what it is that I'm affecting. So trying to learn something about that would be helpful, even basics, just basic stuff.
I'd like to add to Patty's question request, and audio and video for out in the field, especially in natural areas where you're not going to have plugins, where you're going to be dealing with natural light, and how to especially make sure the sound is good, because I've tried shooting a few things just on my own this last summer. It was horrible trying to shoot outside.
Mm-hmm.
So the sound it's a hard thing to then try to edit that out.
Yeah. Well,
and you don't even always realize it until you get to the computer, and then it's too late.
I shot in the field in Alaska for 12 years. And so I know something about, challenging shooting environments, especially wind. And I never left, my office without a windscreen, and I've got one here.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. They're, not as cheap as you would think they'd be for a little piece of foam, but they're designed to fit over, a microphone and block a lot of that wind. But, I can definitely talk more about that kind of reporting, if we did a class just on that. But, between now and then, it might be a good idea to, spend $20-$30, whatever it is, to pick up a few of those, because it's worth the money. Just don't lose them. They like to blow away.
So that's what one of the little things costs, $20 or $30?
You get a bag of them for about $30. Forget how many are in a bag, but the trick is keeping tabs on them, because on a windy day they just like to disappear.
Yeah.
Sure. And Holly, we did do this was before Dan was with Southwest TV. We did do a production club on field production, and I know we covered some of those things that you just mentioned. I don't know if we covered all of them, but you should be able to find on BCAT's YouTube channel the field production one. I realized the other day that the earlier ones that I put up there, I just put the date and I didn't put the topic, so I need to go back through and put the topic so it's easier for people to find. But somewhere on our YouTube channel there should be one about field production. But it'd be good to go over that again for sure.
Oh, excellent! Thanks. I'll look those up.
Thank you all so much for coming. Really appreciate it.